गुरुभ्यो नमः श्री परमगुरुभ्यो नमः श्रीमद् आनंद तीर्थ भगवत पादाचार्य गुरुभ्यो नमः श्री राघवेंद्र तीर्थ गुरुभ्यो नमः। अधुना पीठे विराजमानानां श्री सुबुधेन्द्र तीर्थानाम् आज्ञया तेषाम् आशिषा इयम् उपन्यासमालिका प्रारब्धा वर्तते। We have begun this series of lectures on Bhagavad Gita on the command of Sri Subhadendra Tirtha, the present pontiff of Sri Raghavendra Swami Mutt, and with his grace we continue to give this series of lectures. We have described as to how different adhyayas are yoga adhyayas. Each adhyaya presents a yoga. Bhagavad Gita is a yoga shastra, and Rayaru gives the etymological meaning of yoga very interestingly. He says, Yujyate phalam anena iti karana vitpatya yogaha upayaparaha jnanopayaparaha. Entire Bhagavad Gita is moksha shastra, and it gives instrumentalities of knowledge for realizing moksha. At the same time, the modern analysts of Bhagavad Gita have clearly stated that Bhagavad Gita is a treatise on managing oneself, on human psychology, on human behavior, and we present the interpretations of the slokas of Bhagavad Gita in both the perspectives so that we will bring out the relevance of Bhagavad Gita in our everyday activities. Now, in the first adhyaya was Vishada Yoga. As Rayaru defines yoga, Vishada Yoga, we must recognize that very interesting. Moha nimittakat, shokat and manodaurbhalyam yasmin sati sarva vyaparo paramaha bhavati saha vishadaha. Arjuna was in the status of Vishada. Normally we call it as he was depressed. Even in our everyday life we say that I am depressed. But the root cause for depression is misunderstanding. Somewhere moha, perverted understanding of situation. Mithya jnana, anyatha jnana, viparita jnana, ajnana. All these cause a certain kind of mental depression. How? They first create a sadness, a sorrow situation, sadness. And shoka nimittakat, moha nimittakat, shoka. And manodaurbhalyam. And then sadness leads to the weakness of the mind. And manodaurbhalyam. Yasmin sati sarva vyaparopara mahabhavati. When mind's weakness comes in, we lose interest in every activity. I say, how do I do it? I won't do it. I won't be interested. What is the purpose of doing this? This kind of mood keeps us to sit in a corner and not do anything. Yasmin sati sarva vyapara upara mahabhavati. This is a beautiful definition of Rayaru. Rayaru in Gita Vivarti gives etymological meanings of various words which bring out the messages, which bring out the essentials of the messages in every situation. So, in the first adhyaya was Vishada Yoga because Arjuna and Duryodhana had misunderstandings of the situation. Duryodhana was the Kali Swarupa. As in Mahabharata Tatpara Nirnaya, Madhvacharya says Duryodhana, Dushasana, they are all Kali Swarupas. And Dharmaraja is the icon of Dharma, Arjuna is the icon of Sravana, and Draupadi, Sarva Vidya Draupadi, and Bhimsena Devaru is the icon of Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya, and all these attributes, auspicious attributes are personified in the form of Bhima. And Nakula and Sahadeva are good conduct and good behavior. So like that, Mahabharata Tatpara Nirnaya gives the Adhyatmic interpretation of the different characters. They are not characters. That's why Mahabharata is called as Sarva Shastra Sara. It is not just a story of brothers fighting for a piece of land, but it is symbolization of the entire life. Different types of people characterized with different attributes are found in Mahabharata, and how the confluence of the relationships between the different people takes place, and how we must ultimately establish the rule of dharma. That is the main question of Mahabharata, and it deals with this situation. And so Duryodhana first does not recognize that what he was doing is adharma. He always is having the feeling that what he does is the right thing. He does not allow any analysis in his own mind or listen to the analysis of others. That's why he did not consult Bhishmacharya, Vidura, Drona, and none of them were consulted by him as to what he is doing is right or wrong. He decided that he must defeat the Pandavas, send them again for another 14 years of Vanavasa and Ajnatavasa, and therefore his mind was always polluted. And he had no respect for his own people. He says, Pashyaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Yudhan Drupadaputrena Tavasishyena Dhimata. He tells all his people that look at the Panduputranam Acharya. He addresses him as Panduputranam Acharya. He addresses Dronacharya. You look at the huge army that has assembled on the Pandava side. He does not recognize that his own army is several times bigger than the army of the Pandavas. But still he has no faith in himself. He has no trust in his own people. So he calls Dronacharya as Panduputranam Acharya. Vedavyasa has kept in the formation of the sloka the words in such a way that he addresses Dronacharya as not just Acharya to all of them, but he gives the impression that he was more interested in the welfare, in the victory, in the supremacy of Pandavas. Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Pasya. Then Vyudham Drupadaputrena. It has been put in the form of Vyuhakara. The Vyuha, the formation of the army, has been created by Drishtadyumna, the son of Drupada. So there also that is the indication, Tavasishyena, he is your disciple. That means you have helped the enemy much more than helping me. So lack of trust in Dronacharya. A bad manager, a bad leader always has doubts about his own people. He doesn't trust his own people. That is the beginning of the collapse of his system. Whereas Arjuna was a good manager. He does the analysis of the situation in a very systematic manner. Whereas Duryodhana does not allow that analysis to take place. He says the Pandava Sainya is very big and there are a number of warriors who are valiant, who are Maharathas, and we can't really defeat them. That's why he says all of you should protect Bhishmacharya. He is the only source of possible hope for us, and Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitinjayaha Ashwathama Vikarnascha Saumadattis Tathaivacha Ayaneshu Sarveshu Yatha Bhagam Avasthitaha Bhishmamevabhirakṣantu Bhavantas Sarva Evahi. He says, I have some hope in Bhishmacharya. Nobody can defeat Bhishmacharya. So all of you should protect Bhishmacharya. He had made up his mind that the war should be fought and then he must get victory somehow or the other, and he did not realize that he was on the side of adharma. He must give the land required for the Pandavas to live happily, to peacefully, harmoniously with them, but he wanted to fight and defeat them and send them again to Vanavasa. So all of them have now blown their conch shells. Simhanadam menadyochaihi kuru Vidyapeethamaham Simhanadam menadyochaihi shankham dadhmau prathapavan. Bhishmacharya blew his conch shell to please the Duryodhana, and all other people also blew their conch shells. Even Arjuna and Krishna blew their conch shells. So that was the very awkward situation when the two armies were poised to fight, to start the fighting with each other. At that moment, Arjuna says, Senayor bhayor madhe ratham sthapayame achyuta yavadetan niriksheham yudhu kaman avasthitan kairmaya sahayudhavyam asmin rana samuddyamen योत्स्यमानान् अवेक्षेऽहं येते अत्र समागताः धार्तराष्ट्रस्य दुर्बुद्धेः युद्धे प्रियचिकीर्षवः. After Duryodhana asks his people to protect Bhishmacharya and get ready for the war, and all the people blew their conch shells, Arjuna addresses Krishna. Arjuna first calls him as Achyuta. There is an interesting interpretation or message in this Sambodhana of Arjuna to Krishna by Achyuta. The whole Bhagavad Gita conversation begins by Arjuna referring to Krishna as Achyuta, and it also ends at addressing Krishna as Achyuta. Nakto moha smritir labdha Tatprasadam Mayachyuta. That is the end of entire Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, which begins with the word Achyuta addressing Krishna, it ends up by saying the Achyuta at the end. No, the message is, the interpretation here is that in the beginning he was not knowing the meaning or the significance of the word Achyuta. He thought that Krishna is Chutirahita, Achyuta. At Chutaha, Akaro Vishnu Ruddhishtaha, the one who has been sent by Vishnu, Vishnu's avatar. Krishna is Purna Rupa avatar. He is Achyutaha. Achyutaha, na vidyate chutihi yasyasaha. He does not have any destruction. So Arjuna seems to taunt Krishna that you don't have any destruction, but still you want all of us to be destroyed. Because he had not understood the true purposes, the true attributes of Krishna, and what is life, what is death. He had not understood all these things. So at the end of entire Bhagavad Gita, when he understands, he says, now I have understood the significance of the word Achyuta. Nashto mohaha, moha has been removed, and Tvat prasadan mayachyuta karishye vachanam tava, I do as per your. So addressing Krishna in the beginning as Achyuta, and also at the end telling that I have now understood the significance of Achyuta, and I would like to fight, I would like to perform my duty, and my moha has been removed. That is how the Bhagavad Gita begins, and Arjuna makes his own analysis of the situation. If he kills all the relatives, all of them would be destroyed, and men folk would be destroyed, and women folk would get into some sort of adharma, and he cannot maintain any dharma, and therefore he would not like to fight. But he had forgotten that it is his duty. As a Kshatriya, he is supposed to kill the adharmis and establish the rule of dharma. That is why he got into a situation of Vishala. That is the summary of the first adhyaya. Eva muktva arjuna sankhe rathopastha upavishat visrajya sacharam chapam choka samvigna manasaha. His mind was afflicted with lot of sorrow, indignation, and his mind was having lot of sadness, and with that he kept his arrow and bow in the ratha itself. Rathopastha upavishat. Rathopastha means ratha madhye. Rayaro gives the meaning ratha madhye. Many people show Arjuna and Krishna standing by the side of the ratha, getting down from the ratha and standing. That is not the correct situation explained or described in Bhagavad Gita. Rathopastha, it sits in the Ratha itself by giving up his asana, his seat there, and sits in the middle portion depressed and says that I will not fight. And as the second adhyaya begins, it's called as Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya means jnana. Because Arjuna had got into a situation of Vishada as a result of the misunderstanding, Mohanimittakat, Shokat and Manodaurbhalyam, Yasmin Sati Sarva Vyaparo Paramaha Bhavati Saha Vishadaha. Due to that reason, Krishna had to start systematically to remove the elements of Ajnana or Viparita Jnana from the mind of Arjuna. So the entire second Adhyaya is meant for eliminating these Ajnanas from the mind of sources of Viparita Jnana, Mithya Jnana from the mind of Arjuna. So that he gets freed from the Shoka, and then Shoka leading to the weakness of the mind, and then lack of attention to his duty. All these steps will have to be dealt with in a systematic manner. So the first step is to remove the misunderstandings. So he begins by rebuking Arjuna. As I mentioned, there are 5 steps in this rebuttal. One is Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupasthitam Anarya Jushtam Asvargyam Akirtikaram Arjuna Klaibyam Asmagamah Partha Naitatvayu Upapadyate Shudram Hridayadaurbalyam Taktvottishta Parantapa. The first step is to rebuke him. Why did you get this situation, in this awkward situation? When everyone is poised to fight through the arrows, you have become a depressed person, sad person, and you do not want to fight. What is this? Nonsense. He first rebukes him. But he cannot rebuke him too much. He has to immediately pull him up and put him on the right path. So he addresses him as Arjuna. And also by telling that his action is not acceptable to the good people. Anarya Justam. Justam means Sevitam. It is not acceptable to the good people. Aswargam, he cannot lead you to this heavens, as I mentioned in the last lecture. Aswargam, Akirtikaram, it does not bring Kirti to you also. So why did you do this? And then he addresses him as Arjuna. Arjuna has 10 names, and he conveys them in the Virat Parva. The story comes when they were all going to free the cows, and at that time the Uttara asks Arjuna, how do I know that you are Arjuna? Then I had heard that there are 10 names for Arjuna, and how are these 10 names relevant to you, significant to you? And he asks the significance of every name, Uttara. And when Arjuna tells the meaning of Arjuna, that he is always blemishless, he does not do anything wrong, he is white complexion, that is the meaning of Arjuna. So the use of the word Arjuna here implies that Krishna refers to Arjuna as a person with blemishless character. He cannot get into depression and sorrow like this, and therefore he props him up as saying that he must not get into Klaibyam Asmagamah Partha, and you should not get into Napuskatva. And when this rebuttal and this takes place, Arjuna starts rethinking. He does not have the same firm mind as not fighting. He asks, Katham Bhishmamaham Sankhe Dronancha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyotsamin Pujarha Varisudana. See, in Bhagavad Gita, one interesting thing is that every Sambodhana word is very significant. Here, Arjuna, who had addressed him as Achyuta in the beginning, was very meaningful. Now he uses 2 Sambodhana words for addressing Krishna. One is Madhusudana, another is Arisudana. He says he has been a little mellowed in his seriousness of thought, and he says, how can I fight Bhishmacharya? But you are Madhusudana. look, you killed Madhunamaka Daitya, but you are asking me to kill Bhishmacharya, who is the most venerable person. And you also destroy the enemies, Harisudana. But you are asking me to destroy the persons who are very respectable, like Dronacharya, etc. So in this sloka, Arjuna's mellowing down of his mind becomes very clear. And Vedavyasa uses the words of Sambodhana in such a way that there are messages for our everyday life. So when you are dealing with a truant officer or a truant child, first you must rebuke him, you must prop him up with good qualities and tell him he must awake, arise and conquer. And then the boy starts rethinking as to whether his action, his behavior is appropriate or he must make changes. That is how Arjuna gets induced to start rethinking about his decision. So we will stop for today's lecture. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tatra Sri Vijayo Bhutihi, Dhruvani Tirmatir Mama, Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.